yo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning and welcome to First Coast Connect. I'm Ann Schindler. Today, City Council subpoenas and how state restrictions on DEI could impact the upcoming city budget cycle. We talk about it in our monthly Ask the Mayor segment. Then, the hall that's home to Jacksonville Symphony undergoes a major makeover. We talk to the president and CEO about what's about to change. And an Americana songwriter with 3 decades of road experience celebrates the release of his debut studio album this weekend at Blue Jay Listening Room. Join the conversation. Give us a call on air at 904-549-2937 or head to firstcoastconnect.org where you can find all the ways to connect with us. Stick around. We'll be back right after the news.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The government says consumer prices rose last month by 3.8% on an annualized basis. The report is just out. The increase reflects higher costs triggered by the war in Iran. That war is expected to be one of the issues discussed when President Trump travels to China today. NPR's Domenica Montanaro reports on what Americans think of the U.S.-China relationship in a survey done by NPR in conjunction with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs and Ipsos.
In 2 polls over the last few months, there were some notable findings. First, Americans see China on the rise and eyeing a dominant role in the world. 78% say they believe China wants to be a dominant world leader, particularly economically. But respondents also say they want to keep a strong trading relationship with China, and they want tariffs lowered to keep costs down for U.S. consumers. Most also say the Iran war has been bad for both countries and their economies, but more Americans say the war is boosting China's geopolitical position than say it's helping U.S. national security. Domenico Montanaro, NPR News, Washington.
The U.S. Supreme Court is clearing the way for Alabama to eliminate a congressional district that's represented by a black Democrat ahead of the midterms. NPR's Hansilo Wong says this follows the High Court's recent ruling limiting the Voting Rights Act.
Republican state officials in Alabama had lost a legal fight last year over the state's congressional map after finding that a proposed map by state lawmakers intentionally discriminated against black voters. A lower federal court ruled Alabama should keep using a court-drawn map to get in line with the Voting Rights Act. That map includes 2 districts where black voters in Alabama have a realistic opportunity to elect their preferred candidate. But after the Supreme Court recently weakened the Voting Rights Act's protections against racial discrimination and redistricting, Alabama Republicans asked the justices to speed up their consideration of whether to review their state's congressional map again. The High Court agreed and has thrown out the lower court ruling that required Alabama to use its current map for this year's midterms. Anzila Wong, NPR News.
A nonprofit group is suing the Trump administration over its move to resurface and paint the reflecting pool blue on the National Mall. The group says there was no federal review of the plan and the work is already underway. NPR's Anastasia Tsiolkas says President Trump only revealed the plan last month.
In a video the White House posted to YouTube, he said it would be completed in time for the country's 250th anniversary celebrations in July.
And I said, give me a good price. We can do it for maybe $1.5 million to $2 million as opposed
But the
to...
New York Times reported yesterday that the project's final cost could be upwards of $13 million. That's in a no-bid contract given to a firm Trump chose, per documents the Times says it obtained.
NPR's Anastasia Tsiolkas reporting. This is NPR.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. The St. Johns County Ocean and Fishing Pier will be closed the next 6.5 months while repairs are made to the pilings. The project starts tomorrow and should wrap up at the end of November. Parking near the pier pavilion will be disrupted, and beachgoers will need to use the south entrance since the northern St. Augustine Beach access point will be blocked off. A new report finds persistent racial disparities in Florida's healthcare system. Gabriella Paul reports Black residents experience the worst outcomes in the state.
There's a clear gap in health outcomes among Black, Hispanic, Asian American, and Native American patients in Florida and their white counterparts. Joseph Betancourt is president of the Commonwealth Fund, which does nonprofit research on health equity.
Even when income, insurance coverage, and access to care are equal, people of different races and ethnicities are still not receiving the same care.
Nearly 2 in 10 Black adults are uninsured in Florida, which is higher than the national average. More of those patients are deciding to go without health care due to costs. Black patients are also more likely to die from avoidable causes in Florida compared to other racial groups. Researchers say federal funding decisions like cuts to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act are expected to widen these gaps in care. I'm Gabriella Paul in Tampa.
Widespread showers expected later on this afternoon here in Northeast Florida, as we'll have cooler temperatures today. Highs expected to reach the low 70s along the I-10 corridor and in the mid to upper 70s south of the interstate.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the University at Buffalo, where innovative AI degrees are dedicated to putting students at the forefront of realizing AI for good. More at buffalo.edu/NPR. This is NPR.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Welcome to First Coast Connect. I'm Ann Schindler. Today, a busy season is looming just 2 months out from the official release of the mayor's budget. We ask her how she's preparing and how some of those decisions are being shaped by new state restrictions on DEI spending. Later in the program, a local musician whose sound has been compared to Guy Clark and John Prine celebrates his debut studio album. We take a listen ahead of his record release this week at Blue Jay Listening Room. But first, we're joined, as we are each month, by Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan, here to answer our questions and yours about city business. Welcome, Mayor.
Thank you, Ann. Good to be with you, as always.
Good to be with you on this rainy morning. And if you have any questions or comments you'd like to share, you can join us on air at 904-549-2937. You can also go to firstcoastconnect.org to connect with us, or email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. So I'd like to start, if we could, with just some of the latest news on this spiraling JEA investigation. News that the City Council Special Committee is going to be subpoenaing some top officials from the utility, including the chief administrative officer, the utility's former chief legal counsel, and its current chief executive, Vicki Cavey. You have expressed some concerns about these various investigations impacting consolidated city government. I wonder if you could flesh that concern out a little bit.
Look, as I've said before, these guys are just way out of their lane. This whole investigation is driven by 2 or 3 people for truly political reasons. It just seems like it is this ongoing effort to keep all of this. It's so interesting to me, Anne, how all of this started. And even in discussions that are ongoing about it, all of this started when we had a council president who said he needed to do somebody a favor so that he could replace a board member. And then the moment that came under the microscope, it became, diversion over here. It's because there's all sorts of, racist and problems with leadership. Where did that come from? All of a sudden, we've got this, and now we have to be the ones. The council auditor comes out and says, we need this very narrow scope of things we want to look at for this particular issue we're looking at with JEA in terms of capacity. And so what does the council committee do? They decide to blow it all up and make their own full-fledged investigation of JEA in all sorts of ways that are out of their lane. This is an independent authority with an independent board that does what it is supposed to do. It's functioning board. You saw the Civic Council come out last week and say, you are hurting our government. Stop it. Stop these unnecessary and political investigations and let the process play out. You have a state attorney investigation. You have now a state investigation in Tallahassee. You have a board that is going through the motions of everything they are supposed to do to put checks and balances on all the things with JEA, from the capacity issues to the leadership, whatever it is. But because there is so much effort to divert from what is going on, you're going to continue to see this political meandering. And I think it's so bad for our city, and I think it's really bad for JEA. But, it doesn't seem to matter, to any of the folks that are driving this. They just want to keep their foot on the gas and make sure that they get their names in the headlines and all the things. When, every one of these investigations that you see slung out here, I'm going to be very interested to see if anything comes from this one as well that's not just politically contrived.
I wonder, in terms of just reputationally, I mean, again, these are largely unsubstantiated allegations that we've seen against the CEO in terms of toxic work culture or racist work culture. And it has some similarities to a previous investigation that the city council recently concluded into whether there was something amiss with the city's telehealth provider, in which case the HealthLink Jax was accused essentially of fraud.
Look, this is a repeated pattern that happens over and over again with a particular council person, really with a couple of them, both of whom have expressed their interest in running for mayor or other higher office. It's performative. And what is done over and over again, I will say it again, Ann, I have been saying it for years. This is the type of politics, this Washington-style politics, that hurts our city so badly. Instead of working together to move our city forward, it's these unsubstantiated allegation after unsubstantiated allegation. They don't care who they hurt. They don't care, if it's true. It's just throw it up against the wall, get the allegation out into the press. The press will continue to churn on it as long as there's new stuff every day. And so regardless of the fact that at the end of the day, there'll be a little asterisk that nothing was found. Now it's all, the damage is done, right? The damage is done. And so I think it is so irresponsible, and I think it's so wrong for our city. And I would love to see it stop, but 'tis the season. So I suspect you're not going to see that. But it is, look at that investigation, just on its face. You have Ron Salem, who actually had had asked for a consulting contract with the very company that he's now investigating. You have Jason Gabriel, who wrote the report, who represents the other company who's in the conversation.
Right Side Health.
Right Side Health. You have, and look, I've got, again, I'm going to say I've got nothing against Right Side Health, but they didn't even apply for the RFP for this initiative, and they don't check any of the boxes of what we need. This is a program specifically for the uninsured, which, frankly, Councilman Diamond knew when he threw out all these allegations of Medicaid fraud and this and that and the other thing. He knew all that. He didn't care. Threw it out anyway.
That there was no opportunity for Medicare
no
and Medicaid
opportunity
fraud
for fraud. Yeah.
They don't cover people who have insurance.
This is all a program for the uninsured. They work with our 988 people. They seamlessly work to connect these people to doctors so that they can remain healthy, so that they're not in the emergency room costing millions of dollars, but they can actually get treatment. This has been a highly successful program. And you also heard, the JFRD come out and say, look, this other company really hasn't been a great partner that we've had working, because you've heard that argument too. Oh, we have them working with JFRD. Well, they've missed a bunch of trainings. There have been issues. And they don't provide the type of service that we need in terms of this program. So
JFRD expressing some concerns that the way that this other provider functions might create confusion when people are reaching out to 911 seeking emergency services and find that perhaps they're being diverted.
Yeah. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, this is a completely different issue. And I think what you're seeing here is you're seeing a couple of council people with political aspirations who are trying very hard to muddy the waters about this very good company, which frankly the previous administration used for a long time during COVID and had a good relationship with. It is all about, I'll say it again, follow the money, and always follow the money with these folks. And we got to get that stuff out of our government.
I want to ask you, because a few months ago we spoke earlier in Council President Carrico's tenure leading the council about your relationship, and we had him on this program as well and asked him about how he was going to try to improve that relationship, and he indicated that you all were going to be having these bi-monthly meetings.
We do.
And that we
met yesterday.
So have those meetings been able to forestall any other issues? Because it seems like it hasn't been a perfect relationship in terms of, these ongoing investigations, the special investigations. Those are all things that you've disagreed with.
Yeah.
So what are those meetings like?
Well, look, again, and I'm going to say to you what I've said to you before. A lot of this is political gamesmanship, but at the end of the day, many of the things that we have needed to get across the finish line, we have. 98%, 99% of our budget has gotten through. And so what our discussions focus on primarily in those meetings, those bi-monthly meetings as we come up on council meetings, are what is coming up on council, what are we positioned together on, what are we not going to be positioned together on. It's about keeping those lines of communication open. So whether we are going to disagree or agree, we need to be talking to each other.
Can you point to something that has worked, that has gone forward, that you two have been able to agree on and carry forward, that those meetings have facilitated?
Absolutely. Many things. When we're talking about downtown projects that we're looking at incentives for, or we're taking a look at any of the initiatives that are infrastructure initiatives, those things that are the basic functions of government, we get together and we get on the same page for how far we feel like we can push those things. And I think that, that's where government should be working together and how we do work together.
And how do you talk about these other things, the special investigation for JEA?
I am very frank with him. I tell him that I think it's a misstep. I tell him that I think it's not going to be helpful to him. I like Kevin Carrico. We've had, as just as two people, we have good conversations with each other. I just feel like he's made some unfortunate choices, and all I can do is tell him what I think is going to be helpful and not helpful to both of us, and then he has to make those decisions himself.
And he defends his decisions.
He doesn't really. He just says that look, I'm not going to share all of our conversations, but I think at the end of the day, he feels like needs to do what he does, and so he does that.
We've got a call from Tom on the west side. Good morning, Tom. Go ahead.
Good morning. And I'm just so happy to say I totally agree with the mayor on this. Any investigation by the city council into this is just going to be as valid as the investigation into telehealth, totally unfounded and based on nothing. Any investigation that doesn't center around the role of Ballard and Associates in this is just totally meaningless.
Well, thanks, Tom. I appreciate your comments. Look, I really, as I said, not only are politics always involved in politics, and when I say politics, I mean the bad side. But I do think as we're approaching both the state and then the local elections, this is what you're going to see over the next year. And I'm going to call it out whenever I see it. And I'm going to remind our citizens that this is not what moves us forward. I know people probably get very tired of hearing me talk about love and unity, or maybe they don't. Maybe they need to hear it right now. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I think we have had enough Washington-style politics, make its way down into our city government. I think people want to see us work together. They don't want to see us fight. They want to make sure government is working. And that's why we have worked so hard to create more transparency in everything that we do. And I think that there are a great number of people on that council that just want to move forward and get things done. And we've got a handful of political actors who are going to be doing what they do for the next year. And that's just how it's going to be.
We've got a call from Eugene on the north side. Good morning, Eugene. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor and Miss Ann.
Good morning.
I appreciate you. I just want to give you a Yahoo shout out, Mayor, for your town hall meetings. I think you should continue to do those. I had an opportunity to come to one. It was out of my area. I went to the east side one, and when I tell you those meetings and conferences are powwow, but I thought it would be more like a pep rally, but it's quite intense. And I think everyone in the city should try to attend one, whether it's in their region or not. and maybe they can kind of get a feel for what you have to deal with and listen to.
That's the job. That's
the job you're doing.
That's the job, Eugene. I appreciate it, but that is, as I've said to you in the past, Dan, that is probably my favorite thing that we do. I don't mind being, I mean, look, you can't know what people are feeling unless you listen to them. You can't know what their actual issues are unless you're listening. If you're just hearing yourself talk all the time or listening to people that agree with you, that really doesn't do much to help your citizens. And so in those meetings, he's right. And that was a very interesting meeting. There was a lot going on in that meeting. But people come and they let it fly, and they should. I mean, that's their right. And that's how we as leaders learn is we have to hear that, as my friend Matt Carlucci says, sometimes you have to be taken to the church of the painful truth. And that happens in those town halls. But I enjoy them very much. We have them every few months, and we'll probably schedule another series after the budget is presented. The pre-budget ones are all to get input. The post-budget ones are basically, what do you want to see us fighting the hardest for in this budget? And then we just go to listen, basically. But I love them too, and I thank you for coming. Thank you for going out of your area to make sure that you could attend one.
I want to talk about budget a little bit because, as we said, we're a couple months out from the formal presentation to City Council, but obviously you and your folks are working mightily right now to kind of get all those ducks in a row, determine your priorities. Last year was the first year the city budget was in excess of $2 billion. Mm-hmm. Half of that went to public safety, to JFRD and JSO. Can you give us just some broad outlines in terms of what your priorities are in this upcoming budget, whether there's going to be any surprises?
I don't think there's going to be a lot of surprises, Ann. This is going to be a budget that basically hews toward all the fundamentals that we need. We're going to invest more, and this is what we heard in the town hall meetings. People want to make sure we're investing as much as we can in infrastructure, in sidewalks, in potholes, in those things that make their neighborhoods better. I think still the most popular thing that we've done in terms of changes since we came in was increasing that mowing budget. Mm. People are so excited about that. They're excited that we're spending more money on blight. So I think you're going to see a lot of the basics that are shored up. But yeah, I will tell you, those public safety line items are only going to get bigger because as we get closer to the pension process and all of that, that's going to require more of the city budget. So you're going to see that. Look, it is the only place that we have seen increases in terms of where we have held city government. The rest of city government we have held flat. We haven't grown it. But in terms of public safety, we're a growing city. When you are adding almost 20,000 people a year, you've got to make sure your public safety covers those areas, and that's very, very important in our city.
Last year, the JEA gave an additional $40 million allocation to the city budget process. Are you expecting any money from them this year? Anything that would be comparable to that? And if not, what do you do with that $40 million hole?
No, there won't be an additional ask. If you remember, all the things that we decided to put all that money in, the city council, they took our money out of affordable housing. They took our money out of a bunch of the different initiatives that we had and put it into other initiatives. But at the end of the day, what we wanted to do with that money was make sure we were paying for things that were already encumbered. But we'll be fine. I mean, we will. It's going to be a tight budget. But what we have to do right now is wait and see what is the state going to do in terms of property taxes. That'll end up going on the ballot. So we really don't know right now what that's going to look like. If we end up with any sort of major reduction in our already, and I know people hear this and they say, well, we're still hurting, and I get it. We have very low property taxes compared to the rest of the large cities in the state. And our property taxes are only allowed to go up by 3% a year if you have a homestead. So the bigger problem for people, in my mind, in terms of increase in those property costs, really has more to do with property insurance, which is really very much up to the state, and they don't really seem to want to deal with that. So my hope is that cooler heads will prevail over the property tax issue, and we'll still be, have the opportunity to deal with affordability on things like housing and healthcare and food insecurity and those things that really affect people's bottom line. As I said, 50% of our folks almost rent, and so the property tax thing didn't ever help them anyhow. So these are all things that we're working on to try to create better affordability for people across the board in Jacksonville, which is where we can control. We can't control what they do in Tallahassee and Washington. but we can do our best to bring costs down locally. But we don't know at this point what we're going to have to work with. So part of this is you create a bunch of different contingencies. Mm-hmm. This is how much we can spend in a perfect world. This is how much we can spend if they do X, Y, or Z. And then we're going through a mayor's budget review process right now, and then eventually we'll come out with something that's workable. But you're not going to see any I don't think you're going to see any big surprises out of this year's budget. I think you're going to see a lot of fundamentals that we need to make sure we get done.
We've got a call from Rakeem on the north side. Good morning, Rakeem. Go ahead.
Good morning, Miss Ann. Good morning, Mayor Deegan. I appreciate you all for taking my call. My question for you, Mayor, is, excuse me, sir. My question for you, Mayor, is as a new local nonprofit, I have some ideas that are beneficial for bringing the community together as far as youth involvement, as far as community engagement and things like that.
Okay.
How do I personally reach out to your office to run some of my ideas by you? Because I've been reaching a few different departments, and it's a little hard to reach you with everything going on. But I really feel like Jacksonville is a beautiful place, and we don't have enough programs that are involving the youth, that are keeping them engaged as far as career involvement, career-focused engagements, and positive community-focused sports.
Let me ask you something. So I don't know who you've reached out to. We have Pat McCullough is in charge of that area of youth engagement for us. I don't know if you've reached out to her, but what I would love to do, if we could get it off the air, is to get your information. So that we can have somebody reach out to you. That may be easier if we have your information, because I always love collaboration on this topic. I think there's really nothing more important than getting our youth engaged in the civic process in this city, because as I tell them every time I meet with them, the decisions we make are going to have way more to do with them than with us. So if you could get us your information, I would love to connect you with Pat, and we'll get moving on your ideas.
Yeah, Rakeem, if you can hang on, we will get your phone number and allow the mayor to circle back with you. We've also got a call from Bill in Orange Park. Good morning, Bill. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Hi, Bill.
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
Hey, I want to put this in the very basic terms.
Okay.
To do with this hot air controversy stuff. Man comes home from work and accuses his wife of infidelity right out of the blue. What's the first thing she's going to think? And in saying that, I think the public is leaning more toward the wife nowadays. They've heard enough of the hot air, and they see how unproductive it all is.
Mm.
That's it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. It is unproductive. It's very unproductive. It's predictable as the day is long, but very unproductive.
We got an email about the seats at the stadium. This is from Fabrizio. He says, I noticed several posts selling old stadium seats for $400 each. Is there anything in the stadium renovation deal stipulating the city retains ownership of seats and all of their physical pieces of the stadium? If not, there should be, as the stadium belongs to the city and the taxpayers. The city should be auctioning off the pieces of the old stadium to generate public funds.
I think there is an auction that is planned for that. I don't know when that's happening. I don't think there's a lot of seats involved in that, though. From what I understood from the Jaguars, they didn't feel there was any safe. Actually, I guess this would be Jaguars and the city, and our discussions of how to do that. There was no particularly safe way to remove most of those seats. So most of them are basically destroyed. But I do think there's a handful, at least that was the last I heard, that we're going to go up for auction, and the city would be doing that, but I don't have the information on exactly when that's going to happen, so I'll try to get that to you so you can disseminate that if in fact that's still happening.
And you think that is money that would be coming to the city rather than going to the Jaguars?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. We've got a message from Daryl in St. Augustine saying it would help if PR stunts were not reported by the media. As a former member of the media, I'm curious your thoughts about that. I mean, certainly we have an obligation to report when there is news coming out of the city council, whether it's politically motivated or not.
Yeah, I would say that, and this is a topic on which I take a particular interest as a former journalist for 30 years. I think there's always been a need for consideration of how are we being used here, or are we actually reporting something that's worthy of being reported? Obviously, from where I sit now, I take a much different lens than the one that I used to take, just in terms of where I see fairness. But I will say that I think that that's going to be very much needed. I heard your discussion, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, where it was everything from, hey, I'd like to report everything to, yeah, we need to take consideration. And I do think there has to be, because if you're giving everything equal weight, how are people supposed to know? And how is there truth in that? I think there are objective truths that the media is responsible for reporting. And I think if we just get down to a he said, she said, with absolutely no look at perspective, I think that's troublesome. And I would like to see the media do a better job with that. But I'll say this, Ann, I think it's tough times for the media. I think reporters are asked to do so much more than they used to be asked to do on a whole lot less time, and it's just not it's not conducive to the type of reporting that you'd like to see. But I think most reporters are trying to do the best they can. I'll say that.
We have a message on Facebook from Martha. She says, I heard Councilman Diamond at the Beaches Watch last week talking about the beaches not getting a good return on the taxes we pay. Can you explain?
Yeah, listen, I wish Councilman Diamond would spend even 5 minutes thinking about the beaches these days. I mean, truly, I think he loves to throw stuff out. But we've been working with the beaches, both Neptune Beach and Atlantic Beach, in terms of and particularly Atlantic Beach, in terms of ways that we can rework the interlocal agreement to where they feel like it works out better. But in the meantime, we've been working with both entities to try to make sure that they feel like they are absolutely getting what they need. So far, we have heard from all three beaches mayors that they feel pretty darn good about those conversations and about what we've been able to work out so far, and we're continuing to do that. I'm a beaches resident. Obviously, I want the beaches to get what they deserve. But I would love, just once to see those discussions become something other than throwing darts. Be specific then. Tell us exactly how that's not happening, because we have leaned into a lot of help for the beaches, and I think we'll continue to do that.
He's your city council member, I guess.
Well, he is my city council member, and I actually voted for him back when he ran, because he said he was going to be this moderate who was going to work with everybody, and that has certainly not been what he has turned out to be.
Got an email from Mark. He says, Mayor, every time I make improvements to my property, you raise my taxes based on what the city deems it's worth and not what it cost me to build. Why is it okay to make money or capitalize on my sweat equity?
Well, look, we have a city that needs services, is the bottom line. And our top funding source for those services is property taxes. But at the end of the day, there are so many stipulations in place if you have a homestead exemption. As I said, your property taxes can't go up more than 3% a year. That's the law. And so I understand the frustration there. At the end of the day, though, when you look at what you're paying for property taxes versus the other taxes and fees that you pay from other entities, and also when you look at that versus how much your property insurance is going up, I would say that comparison is pretty darn good. But I will say to you that at the end of the day, we have to decide what kind of city we want. Do you want your roads paved? Do you want your sidewalks done? Do you want public safety there when you need them? Do you want, if you have a fire in your house, to have the firefighters be able to be there? That's not hyperbolic. If we don't have property taxes, then we don't have the money to pay for those things. And what I always tell people when I'm talking about this is, when we're looking to create better affordability for people, in other words, what's going to put the most money back into your pocket? That's probably not the area where it's going to be. We should look at how we're actually doing things. Are we providing the amount of affordable housing we need? Are we providing the amount of food security? Are we making sure that we're cutting costs in every way, from permitting to other issues around the city, where we're creating the most value and most return on our investment? I'll say it again. It's why we're investing in downtown. It creates more money into our pocket than what we're going to spend, and that will eventually be a reason we don't have to raise taxes. And so it is with an eye toward the future that I make a lot of these decisions that I make. But in terms of your property taxes, as I've said, that doesn't have a lot to do with decisions that I can make. All I can really do is react to what's out there. But we can't raise your property taxes more than 3% a year if you're homesteaded.
We have a call from Simone on the west side. Good morning, Simone. Go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, yes. Good morning, Mayor. I had a question about the Jacksonville Jazz Festival. First of all, thankfully that is free, so there's no complaints there. But last year, I noticed that for pedestrians who got dropped off or parked, there was such a distance from the closest you could get with a vehicle to the entrance. I know you all changed the location this year. Is it going to be a closer distance from when you get dropped off to the actual entrance?
You know, I'm sorry to tell you, I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head, but I'm happy to find out and get Ann or somebody to report back. If you want to leave your information, I'm happy to try to get that information back to you. But I know there are also, you know, the folks out there with the little carts and things like that take folks around, little rickshaws. But I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry. I wish I did.
Yeah, there are some distances sometimes in hoofing it, but also it's getting easier to get some rideshare drop-offs and stuff. We have a call from Bill in Orange Park. Good morning, Bill. Go ahead.
Hello?
Good morning, Bill. Go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I apologize. I spoke earlier. I didn't know I was still on the line.
Oh, apologize, Bill. Welcome back to the
Bill.
program. Thanks. We've got a call now from Tim in Orange Park. Good morning, Tim. Go ahead.
Good morning. Yes, I have another thing about the Jazz Festival.
Okay.
It seems to be drifting away from jazz. Now, don't get me wrong. I go every year since Mayport. Blah blah blah. I got tickets for Friday night for George Clinton, who's awesome.
Yes.
And last year was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. But I'm just going like, it kind of seems to be drifting away from jazz. And then I wanted to toss another thing. I'm not a religious guy, but we talk about DEI. Wasn't Jesus like diversity, equity, inclusion? And then one more thing. Last week, somebody made a statement on your panel about woke, and I'm like, woke? If you're a religious person, wouldn't you be woke? How could you not be woke? I would think God created woke. And that's all I wanted to say. Just a little rant. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, that was a variety of topics there to cover. I will say I don't get the sense that the Jazz Festival is going away from jazz. I guess it's a little. It depends on your definition. I guess there are so many different types of jazz, but it continues to be probably the most popular thing that we have here in the city, certainly for free. And I'm very excited about kicking it off again this year. Next week this week, right? We're also opening Music Heritage Park, which is going to be just another great addition. We're going to have some local musicians that have been part of that wonderful heritage that may be taking part in that celebration as well. So I think we have a wonderful musical heritage here in Jacksonville, and it's exciting to be able to open that up and get people to enjoy it.
I'm not sure everybody knows about that music garden, but this is sort of part of this North Bank. A few things that have reopened, including the bridge over McCoy's Creek and a newly refurbished Corkscrew Fitness area. But there is this walk of fame that features the artists from this area, and it really runs the gamut, from Longino Parsons and Yellow Card to 38 Special, the Allman Brothers, the Johnson Brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, so all of these
all
people
over the place
being recognized as part of this walk, and there's sort of a playscape with musical instruments. Tell us a little bit about that. That is going to be, I guess, unveiled formally this week.
It's going to be unveiled formally this week, and we're going to have some of our musicians that have been a part of Jacksonville's heritage that show up and help us celebrate that.
You want to tell us who we might be seeing?
I would, except that I'm waiting on a confirmation on a couple, so I don't know who actually is, all of who is going to be there, so I don't want to say, but it's going to be so much fun. And I think so many people think of Jacksonville's musical history when they think of Jacksonville, and I think it's going to be a great educational piece for our kids. But also, what I love too is this now provides that complete connection all the way around the bend, of the park, which is fantastic. So people can walk all the way from Riverside over to
the Hyatt,
now. And then of course that just is going to continue on as we go down further into the
down here.
Plaza.
We're waiting for that connection to sort of cross in front of the Four Seasons.
It's
and
coming.
Link it up.
It's coming.
Yeah. In terms of downtown development, there have been a few conversations. I just briefly want to touch on this Winn-Dixie deal because they are seeking $12 million. Kind of a retention incentive. We've seen more of those recently. And that hinged for a little bit on whether or not they were going to be closing a store in Brentwood. They've now agreed to keep open. But can you make the case on, this is a homegrown company. They've sort of been here forever. Why do we have to pay to keep them?
Yeah, I think that is really a key part of this. It is a homegrown company. We do want them to stay, and I think that this piece on Brentwood is very, very important, though. This was one of those things that when it came up at the meeting was sort of and immediately went to work with their folks and said, yeah, we're going to keep it open, and we'll work with the city to make sure we can continue to make that a resource for folks in Brentwood. So the only case that I can really make for you on this is that this is a lot of jobs. It's also a company that's been here forever. We didn't want to lose that to Tampa, and one that we do want to keep these stores around. So I think this is an issue that now that we have, I think this will move forward in council tonight. Now that it has been determined that they will be staying open, and we'll just continue to work with them to make sure that there is not another food desert created in that neighborhood.
All right. Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Mayor Donna Deegan, Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan, thanks so much for being here again.
Thanks for having me, Ann. Always great to be with you.
All right. Up next, musical chairs. Seating improvements are just one change planned at a summertime overhaul of Jacoby Symphony Hall. We'll tell you about it after the break. Welcome back. From new and more comfortable seating to improved acoustics, the home of the Jacksonville Symphony is getting a makeover. Here to tell us about it is Stephen Libman. He is the Symphony's president and CEO. Stephen, thanks for being here. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning. And so you've got a busy summer ahead. Everybody always looks forward to home renovations. I'm sure that you are just as equally excited about the process, but tell us a little bit about what the schedule is, because you still have performances coming up.
Exactly. It's a very busy time at the Symphony. So we still have concerts left. And this weekend we have concerts May 15th and 16th, which is Beethoven's Triple and a Brahms. And then we have an At the Ballet, which is May 21st and 22nd. A tribute to Elton John, May 29th and 30th. And then we finish the season, June 5th and 6th, with a special Rachmaninoff third piano concerto with George Lee. That goes through the 6th. Then on June 8th, we begin the renovation and construction of a lot of changes in Jacoby Symphony Hall.
There's going to be some major improvements.
Yes.
A lot is going to be pulled out and torn down. Is there any plan for like a last hurrah party in there before you start ripping out the seats?
There are actually some patrons who want to take the seats home with them.
Oh, nice.
So we're doing several things. So we will soon be announcing to the general public that nonprofits who would like seats can come and get them. So there's 1,800 seats that we will gladly donate to any nonprofit that would like them. We think that's a nice thing to do for the community. This has been in the works for 2 years. So we've been planning this. And the schedule is very tight. So imagine this: on June 8th, the crew comes in, starts removing the seats, carpeting comes out, some of the handrails come out, and they have until August 31st to then repaint the hall, put new carpeting down, install new handrails, drill into the concrete to put even more aisle lighting, install more locations for wheelchairs, and then install the seats. All has to happen by August 31st.
Wow.
So we have been planning this. It's almost down to the minute. We purchased the seats from a company in Montreal. There's only 3 major manufacturers in the world that produce high-end seats for symphonic halls. And
what are the needs in a symphonic hall versus if you're just putting together a movie theater or a regular community theater?
Absolutely. Great question. So the primary need is to enhance the acoustics. So the cushions, of course, will be very comfortable. The seats will be a little wider than we have now, which is great. That's an important concern. But the most important thing is wood. So the back of the seat will be wood, the bottom of the seat, and the side panels. Unlike plastic or metal that you might see in a movie theater or even in a stadium. So everything is designed around the acoustics, and that's just so important for us to enhance the acoustics. And at the same time, we are installing special acoustic shelving for our musicians. So the hall is acoustically perfect for the patrons. But we've learned through a lot of research that our musicians have a hard time hearing each other because you're in this space with 60 to 90 musicians pumping out a ton of sound, and they have a hard time hearing each other, and they need to hear each other. And Courtney Lewis, our music director, and other conductors have a hard time hearing properly on stage. So what we hear in the audience is very different from what the musicians hear. So we are, at the same time that the hall is renovated, we're installing a special acoustic shelving that will allow them to hear each other better.
That's interesting. And so what kind of feedback do you hear from them about that experience? I imagine that when the improvements are in place, that's going to be a very different performance experience.
Yes, we hope so. So a lot of research has gone into that. We're going to bring our acousticians back who we've been working with, and they'll make sure that everything is properly balanced. And in addition to the acoustic shelving and the new seats, we are installing new speakers. So those speakers are used for pops concerts, everything that's not classical. And there's two reasons to do that. One is the speakers that we rent all the time cost us a lot of money, and they're not really the latest technology. So we're going to purchase new speakers with the latest technology, and they will save us about $150,000 a year in rentals. So for pops concerts, the audience will have a also better balanced sound. And we're very, very sensitive to our disabled patrons. So in the hall, we will be installing better wheelchair seat locations and as I mentioned, more aisle lighting.
Yeah, because some of the construction that took place previously maybe isn't the most up to date when it comes to ADA compliance and standards that are in place now.
I think they did the best that they could at the time, but now we're going to bring it up to code and to make sure that everything is absolutely the way it should be.
In terms of you mentioned that some of the seats are going to be slightly wider, and that is, I think, the trend in a lot of places, a little bit more comfortable perhaps, and a little bit more capacious, but you're going to be actually having a net loss of some seating. So how is that going to impact operations? How many seats are you anticipating that you're going to lose?
We're losing about 200 seats, and that's happening for two reasons. One, it's just the mathematics. If you have wider seats, you're going to lose several seats, and it's mostly happening. One seat in every row goes away, and then at the very top will be a few more seats. In addition to that, we have a choral terrace, and there were about 40 seats, maybe 20 on each side. And there was a platform that was built into the floor. That platform was actually blocking a fire exit. So again, to comply with safety and all sorts of regulations, that's being demolished.
That seems smart.
I think it's smart. Yes. In the event of
the executive decision there, right?
Right. It was an easy decision to make.
Remove that obstacle. And so this is going to be in place for the fall season.
Yes.
How do you anticipate the audience experience will change once we get underway?
I think they will absolutely love it. We will open up the hall and give an opportunity for our patrons to come in September to sort of test their seats, and we will be selling seats. A lot of our patrons can put their names on seats, which they will love, and that will be theirs for many years to come. The audience will see different colors. It's more of a blue than the green that we have now. And I really think that it will bring those seats have lasted 30 years. They were state of the art at the time. They were very comfortable. If you've been in Jacoby Hall and you sit down, you hear a thunk as you put the seat down. And that's because it's just metal on metal, or as I say, bone on bone. It's time for the hip replacement. Those seats have to be replaced. It will also be very quiet. So when you sit, you won't hear any thunk. And we had a lot of our board members and patrons test the seats, and everyone who sat in a test seat said, this is nice.
That's great. And you are also taking care of your, supporters in a different way.
Right.
You're broadening out your lounge
Donor
area.
Lounge. That's right. So we will be, beginning on May 18th, we will be expanding the donor lounge. And that's a space also for meetings and receptions. The biggest change is we will expand from 2 toilets to 6. So that's a big improvement. But that lounge will be updated, and it's going to be absolutely beautiful. That's a longer project, so that begins on May 18th, and that should finish sometime in early October.
Well, having been through a few home improvements, I certainly wish you luck this summer. I'm sure it'll be a busy time, but it's great to see you. Stephen Libman, he's the president and CEO of the Jacksonville Symphony. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Ann.
All right. Up next, an Americana songwriter with 3 decades of road experience celebrates the release of his debut studio album this weekend. We sit down with Patrick Hagerman after the break.
Wolfson Children's Hospital, where generations of families have found hope. Because it's here at Wolfson Children's where answers are found, odds are beaten, and comebacks begin every day. Wolfson Children's, always here. Visit wolfsonchildrens.com.
Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Even when we drive defensively, accidents can still happen. Do you know what to do next? There's more to it than you might think.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
This May, before the stages fill and the city swings, start your Jazz Festival week with a legend, Thelonious Monk's Straight No Chaser. A rare film and intimate portrait of one of jazz's true originals, Thelonious Monk. Brilliant, complex, and completely his own. Straight No Chaser screens Wednesday, May 20th at WJCT Studios. Doors open at 6:30, film at 7. Get your tickets now at wjct.org/film and kick off the Jazz Festival the right way.
It's being called a scientific and aesthetic breakthrough, the largest ever image of the Milky Way. It shows cosmic gases and dust particles in detail we've never seen before.
So the center of our galaxy is filled with very cold gas and dust that is not visible to the eye, but you can see it very well at millimeter wavelengths.
The hidden chemistry at the heart of the Milky Way. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11 on WJCT News 89.9.
Smoking rates in the U.S. are at their lowest recorded levels ever. But newer tobacco products appealing to young people have come on the market, potentially addicting more of them for life. Some cities and countries are experimenting with a new approach, a generational ban, preventing tobacco sales for anyone born after a certain year. Could a generational ban work across the U.S.? That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. An acclaimed Americana performer who's graced stages from Florida to his home state of Illinois for decades celebrates the release of his debut studio album this month. Here to tell us about it is singer-songwriter Patrick Hagerman. Patrick, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Ann.
Congrats.
Thank you very much. It's been a long time.
A long time coming. And so you have been writing songs, performing for about 3 decades.
Yeah, I would say somewhere between 25 and 30 years. I started when I was really young, playing like Irish music around my hometown of Springfield, Illinois. So that was my first performance experience in my teens. And yeah, it's been a long road to here, but I'm glad we're here.
And so tell us why it takes long to create a studio album like this one, and what it means to have this, to reach this milestone.
I think for me, it was accumulating songs and experience over time and being able to, with this album in particular, gather the songs I thought that fit a narrative and then be in a position creatively, having some assistance financially from fans and loved ones and supporters to go in and make the record that I've wanted to make. I've tried to make records before at a musician friend's home or on my own, and just it kind of, the creative process didn't work properly. Going into a wonderful studio, and we went to St. Augustine to Retrophonics recording studio there to make this record, and everything just kind of felt right and came together.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful sound. I want to take a listen to one of the singles off the new release. It's called Evelyn. Well, let's take a listen and then we'll come back and talk about it.
All right.
Taking it slow. Might be the devil
I know. But if she's the devil, I sure feel bad for God. Likes her tequila, don't get too tired. Her love language is a Marlboro Light and a honky-tonk band on a Tuesday night in a bar you've never heard of. Evelyn, make me wanna holler like a rim 10-10. We go together like money and sin. I gotta win your heart somehow. Evelyn, wind me up and turn me loose. Run me in circles like a duck, duck, goose. I'm wrapped around your finger now.
So amazing lyrics there. I love her love language as a Marlboro Light. It's really evocative. And so, you've been compared in your style and your songwriting skill to John Prine, Guy Clark, Townes Van Zandt. Who are your musical idols?
Well, you just named three of them.
Uh-huh.
John Prine, probably of that group, is my biggest influence. I don't know if it's because we're both Illinois-based songwriters. I got to see him when I was 18 years old, and then a number of times after that. But I grew up in a house that had a Johnny Cash record next to a Beatles record, next to a Paul Simon and Garfunkel record. So I grew up with some pretty cool music in the home. My dad loved country music, and my mom was more into the folk music of the 60s. So all of those influences kind of come together. And then I found Midwestern alternative country like Uncle Tupelo and what turned into Wilco, the old 97s, a lot of that in my late teens that really influenced me, and the Grateful Dead.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, that's a wide range, but all very authentic voices. And are your songs rooted a lot in personal experience? Are they more sort of fictionalized narratives?
Yeah, especially with this record, most of them are personal experience, with the exception of, I think, one song, which is called Valdosta Women, which is about the Valdosta women's riots post-Civil War.
It's an extraordinary story. So how did you hear about that? I'd never known about that before I heard that song.
I had writer's block, and it was during COVID lockdown, and I took a road trip, and I said, the first sign that I take notice of, I'm going to figure out how to write a song about that. And I saw a sign that said Valdosta, Georgia, and I Googled historical events in Valdosta, Georgia, and that's what popped up, and I wrote a song about it.
It is a wild story. And so this event that we're talking about, there's an album release that you're doing at Tuffy's Music Box in Sanford, and that's on the 22nd.
Correct.
But locally, you got your shirt on from the Blue Jay listening room.
Yeah.
The owner helped produce this album.
She did.
And so this is a performance that you're doing in an album release on May 23rd. Tell us what to expect, because you're playing not solo, right?
No, it'll be a full band performance. The musicians that made the record with me, which are all just wonderful musicians. There's too many to list off right now, but there's a ton of great musicians coming to join me at Blue Jay. Rock Helton, my good songwriting buddy from Dunedin, Florida, is going to open the show. And, anytime you get to play the Blue Jay stage, it's a really special occasion, and it's just my favorite room to play in the whole world, so I'm happy I get to do it there.
All right. Well, we're going to play out with a song called Roberta. Patrick Hagerman, thank you so much for being here, and congratulations again.
Thanks for having me, Ann.
All right. Thank you for listening. Join us tomorrow when we sit down with 4 members of Gen Z to talk about what's shaping the anxious generation. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
I was young and reckless when I got down on my knees to pray. I'm older now and faithless, and you'll carry crosses to your grave. Roberta, do you still believe in me? Roberta, can your angel set me free? Sweet Roberta, am I still your everything? Roberta, are you out there listening? Are you out there listening?
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Tidbits, family owned and operated since 1985. 4 locations: Bay Meadows, Hendricks, Mandarin, and now Fleming Island. Menu items include fresh sandwiches, salads, and soups. Open Monday through Saturday. Online ordering and menu at clarastidbits.com.
This is